everyone, welcome back to Actual English. My name is Jennifer Clyde. It is time for lesson 52, and so far we have been talking about business-related topics. And even today we've got a business-related topic. It's going to be all about business negotiations. We often watch films, right? And if we see someone at the top of a building just about to jump off, we often have negotiators, right? Even when someone holds people in hostage, what do? We find a negotiator to go in and persuade the person to let their hostages go. So today we'll talk about negotiations, especially focusing on business. Are you good in business negotiations, or are you terrible at negotiating? Let's take a look at today's actual talk.
So Joanne, you said last time you used to work at a medical clinic?
Yeah, that was back home when I was in my early 20s.
Did you work there long?
I worked there for about 2.5 years, actually.
So you must have gotten a raise at some point.
At some point, yes. It was a little easier to get a raise because I wasn't a freelancer. I was actually contracted.
Okay.
So all the details were in the contract, and after a certain period of time, they got me in and they asked me if I was satisfied with the job. And
are you satisfied? Really?
Was I satisfied with the working conditions? And they asked me about my opinion, and I said, look, I'm doing this and this. And I'm thinking maybe it's time for a bit of a raise.
Okay,
yeah.
So you negotiated your own raise.
Yeah, I brought it to the table. I said, look, in the job description in the beginning, when I was inexperienced, I only did so amount of work.
Yeah.
But now I'm doing this, so I might need a bit extra.
Yeah, actually, when I was very young, my first job, I was a manager of a coffee kiosk.
Oh.
In a very big building in downtown Minneapolis, and I started out just as an employee, and after 3 months, or after about a month, I was suddenly made the manager. The manager quit, but I didn't get a raise. So after 3 months, I said, look, I need my review and I need a raise.
That's good because you were just a normal employee, but now you're managing people. That's a whole different responsibility.
A whole lot more responsibility.
Exactly.
So I said, I need something commensurate with my, input into the company. And they came back to me with a 10-cent raise.
Oh, wow. That's a big raise.
So I gave my 2 weeks notice and we were done.
Good on you.
Okay, welcome back everyone. We are going to take a look at the actual talk conversation together, line by line. So what were the two talking about? They were talking about negotiating their own raise, right? Simply put, asking for a raise. And of course, getting a raise. Getting what you want by negotiating. I think we negotiate many things in life, but today, let's focus on negotiating one's own raise, as in pay. Let's take a look. So Peter says, so Joanne, you said last time, okay, the last time they spoke, you used to work at a medical clinic. That's right, that is what she mentioned. I think Joanne said that she used to work as a receptionist at a medical clinic. So she says, yeah, that was back home. Now by no, you all know what this means. This means where? Back in my home country, 고향, right? That was back home when I was in my early 20s, okay? And then he asks, did you work there long? Did you work there for a long time? Shortened, you can simply say, did you work there long? Did you work there long? And what did Joanne say? She said, I worked there for about, approximately, roughly. She's not saying exactly 1 year, exactly 2 years, but she's saying around, about, roughly 2.5 years, actually. I worked there for about 2.5 years. We'll take a look at that pattern later on and practice together. So Peter says, so you must have gotten a raise at some point. Okay, at some point, yeah. Often if you work at a certain place or for a certain company for more than a year, Yeah, I think we all get a raise, right? Even if it's a small raise, we tend to get paid a little more, so we get a bigger salary. But that's not the case with all companies. So he's asking, so you must have gotten a raise at some point. Well, Joanne says it was a little easier to get a raise. Why? Because, or shortened cuz, I wasn't a freelancer. Okay, so this is the point. I was not a freelancer. What was she? She says, I was contracted. Okay, so simply put, she's saying, well, it wasn't too difficult. It was a little easier to get a raise. Why? Because she wasn't a freelancer, she was contracted. We often sign contracts with companies, for example, right? And if you sign a contract, it usually says that you will work with them or be partners with them for a certain time, a given time, whether it's for 1 year or for 2 years or even longer. So when you say I was contracted, it means that you signed the contract and you had a contract with a certain company. Okay, so they both agreed that they would work together for a set time. So Peter, of course, understands by saying, okay. And then Joanne gives us details. Wow, this is really long, so let's take it slowly, line by line. She says all the details were in the contract. Now, it was in the contract, meaning it was included in the contract. It was written on the contract. And after a certain period of time, after some time, they got me in. What does this mean? They got me in? They got me in this situation means, well, they accepted and they agreed to work together, okay? They had her work with them or work for that company. They got me in the company and asked me if I was satisfied with the job. Okay, so got me in. Perhaps they set a time and they said, hey, let's have a meeting. Can you come in by a certain time? So she went in the office, perhaps in like context-wise. So they got me in and asked me if I was satisfied with the job, if I had any problems with the job, if I was happy with the job, or if I was unhappy with the job. Now, was I satisfied with the working conditions? That's a question they asked. And they asked me about my opinion. And I said, look, I'm doing this and this, okay? And maybe it's time for a bit of a raise. Okay, let's take a look at this whole thing together once again. So in the beginning, she says, everything, the details were included in the contract, was written on the contract. And after some time, after working with that company she signed a contract with, they got her in, meaning they asked her to come in to meet them, and they asked her if she was happy with the job, if she was satisfied with the job, and also if she was satisfied or happy with the working conditions, okay? And they asked me about my opinion, so asked her many, many questions to see if she was happy and satisfied with everything. And then she said, well, I did this and this for you, and I think maybe it's about time for a raise. I think you should pay me a little bit more, is exactly what she said. So, moving on. Peter says, okay, so you negotiated your own raise. Negotiate. You can negotiate something with somebody. Perhaps you can persuade someone to give you something, pay you more, negotiate. So you can negotiate something. In this case, negotiate one's raise. Now, Joanne says, yeah, I brought it to the table. Bring something to the table is an idiomatic expression. It means to provide something so that you will get an advantage or a benefit. So she says, I brought it to the table. What did she bring to the table? She said, look, in the beginning, at the very start, when I started working with you, when I was inexperienced, okay, when you don't have experience, it's not it's inexperienced, I-N. When I was inexperienced, I only did such amount of work. Now, since she mentioned only, we can tell that she was not too busy. She didn't do a lot of work. She only did a set amount of work. And then she says, but now I'm doing this and this and this. So I might need a bit extra. A bit meaning a little extra. She's talking about pay, money. I think I need a bit extra, meaning I think I need a bit of a raise, a bigger or a larger salary. Now, Peter says, actually, when I was very young, he's giving an example, or he's explaining to Joanne about his experience. When he was young, when I was very young, I was a manager of a coffee kiosk. What is a kiosk? That word here, K-I-O-S-K. You pronounce it as kiosk. I think we see many kiosks on the streets these days. Maybe not as many as before, but say, for example, if you go to a mall or even on the streets close to bus stops, you will see small kiosks selling newspaper or even gum, a few drinks sometimes. You may even find street vendors that sell tteokbokki and really light snacks, quick snacks. But those places are what? They're called kiosks. They're small stores usually, small stores that you can find on the street or even at malls, okay? So he says that he was a manager of a coffee kiosk, a small coffee place perhaps. And he says, I started out. Start out means to begin, okay? I started out, I began just as an employee, okay? And after about a month, I was suddenly made the manager, okay? So at first he was just an employee, okay? So his salary probably wasn't too high, but all of a sudden, after a month, he became the manager, okay? The manager quit. He quit his job, and I didn't get a raise. So he's talking about how, first of all, he was an employee, his manager quit, so he became the manager, but he didn't get a raise. He was getting paid the same amount. So moving on, Joanne says, oh, that's not good. Now, Peter says, so after 3 months, okay, after 3 months passed, I said, look, I need my review, okay, and I need a raise. A review of something is, if you use it as a verb, it means to go over, study something over again. You could review for an exam. You could review all the information and all the expressions we learn every lesson. But here, he's using review as a noun. He says, I need my review, meaning I need you to tell me if I've been doing well or not, okay? And I need a raise. Now, Joanne says that's a whole different responsibility. She's talking about being an employee and then jumping up to become the manager. Now, Peter says a whole lot more responsibility, okay? As a manager, you do have many more responsibilities. So I said, you know, I need something commensurate, okay? This means adequate, with my input into the company. This is a difficult word. We'll take a look at it later on, but he's saying, look, I'm doing this much work now, then I should get paid this much more, okay? So, and they came back to me. Come back to someone in this context, in this conversation, doesn't really mean to come back physically, but it means to reply, okay? They came back to me. Their reply was a 10-cent raise. They came back to me with a 10-cent raise. So he did get a raise, right? He was getting paid more, but how much more? A 10-cent raise. He was getting 10 cents more, and that was a raise. I would be angry too. Wouldn't you be angry? It's like getting 10won more in Korea, right? So, yeah, Rachel, she's being sarcastic. She's joking. She's not serious. She says, wow, that's a big raise. Now, Peter says, so I gave my 2 weeks notice and we were done, meaning we were finished. I was done with that company. I left the company. That's underlined, which means we'll be taking a look at that pattern. But here, he says, I gave my 2 weeks notice. You can give somebody notice. It means to let them know about something in advance. But usually when you give your 2 weeks notice or a 1 week's notice or 3 weeks notice, it means you are telling your company or that person that you will be quitting in that time. So a 2 weeks notice means he said to the company, hey, or his boss, I will be quitting in 2 weeks. If you give somebody a 3 weeks notice, you're saying, hey, I will be quitting in 3 weeks. So that is exactly what happened when he worked at that coffee kiosk. And that about does it for today's actual talk. Okay, everyone, now listen to it one more time.
So Joanne, you said last time you used to work at a medical clinic?
Yeah, that was back home when I was in my early 20s.
Did you work there long?
I worked there for about 2.5 years, actually.
So you must have gotten a raise at some point.
At some point, yes. It was a little easier to get a raise because I wasn't a freelancer. I was actually contracted.
Okay.
So all the details were in the contract, and after a certain period of time, they got me in and they asked me if I was satisfied with the job. And
are you satisfied? Really?
Was I satisfied with the working conditions? And they asked me about my opinion, and I said, look, I'm doing this and this. And I'm thinking maybe it's time for a bit of a raise.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you negotiated your own raise.
Yeah, I brought it to the table. I said, look, in the job description in the beginning, when I was inexperienced, I only did so amount of work.
Yeah.
But now I'm doing this, so I might need a bit extra.
Yeah. Actually, when I was very young, my first job, I was a manager of a coffee kiosk.
Oh.
In a very big building in downtown Minneapolis. And I started out just as an employee. And after 3 months, or after about a month, I was suddenly made the manager. The manager quit. But I didn't get a raise. So after 3 months, I said, look, I need my review and I need a raise.
That's good, because you were just a normal employee, but now you're managing people. That's a whole different responsibility.
A whole lot more responsibility.
Exactly.
So I said, I need something commensurate with my, input into the company. And they came back to me with a 10-cent raise.
Oh, wow. That's a big raise.
So I gave my 2 weeks notice and we were done.
Good on you.
Now, today's actual talk wasn't too difficult, was it? All right, then let's take you to our next segment, which is actual expressions. As always, we've got a few vocab words for you, and of course, an idiom as well. The first one is to negotiate. Today's topic is business negotiation, but this time the stress goes elsewhere. It's negotiate. It goes right here. Now, business-wise, it can also mean to settle or to arrange. But for example, you can also negotiate prices when you go shopping, and you can also haggle. Okay? Haggling is like bargaining. With the store owner, you may say, no, hey, give me a 2,001 discount. No, give me a 5,001 discount. Hey, 안 해주면 안 사요. Okay, that is haggling. So you can negotiate in different situations as well. That's negotiate. What about to bring something to the table? As I mentioned, this basically means to provide a benefit or an advantage. Okay, you can bring something to the table to, of course, get an advantage or a benefit. And lastly, we have commensurate. Commensurate. It means adequate or sufficient. Okay, so it means pretty much an equal amount of something, like a balance. Think of a balance, sufficient or adequate. Commensurate is the pronunciation of that word. Now, let's take you to some patterns. The first pattern is work somewhere for how long? Time duration. A simple sentence is, I worked there. We're talking about a past experience. Worked. I worked there for about, which means roughly a year or two. This means a year or two, maybe about a year or even 2 years. I worked there for a couple of years is another way of putting that. What about this one? I'm thinking of working there for about half a year. Now, since we have the word about, we're not saying exactly, but we're saying roughly, around that time duration. I'm thinking of working there for about half a year, about 6 months. Got it? The next one is start out as. Now, Peter mentioned something about starting out as an employee, just an employee. Start out as basically means to begin work as something. So you can say, I will be starting out as an employee. Now, this is if you will be starting a job as an employee soon, you can say, I will be starting out as an employee. What about this one? I started out. We're talking about the past once again. I started out as a part-time server. I started out as a part-time server, but I became the manager in 2 years. That's what you can say, all right? Here we go with one last pattern. Now, give one's notice or give somebody one's time duration. Add an S, notice. This does look very, very complicated, right? Looks tricky, but remember how Peter said, I gave them my 2 weeks notice and I was done. He was finished. He quit the job. So here we go. I gave them 2 weeks notice. Now, that's what I mean. Time duration and then an apostrophe after the time duration. I gave them 2 weeks notice, meaning I gave them notice 2 weeks in advance. You're letting somebody know that you will be quitting the job. Here's one more. I gave my notice last week. Okay? Give one's notice. That's the simpler pattern. I gave my notice when? Last week. I gave my notice 2 weeks ago. I gave my notice 3 weeks ago, which means I let them know 3 weeks in advance that I will be quitting. And that about does it for today's patterns as well. Okay, everyone, let's move on to our next segment.
When I negotiate my salary for this job, I telling the truth, I really didn't know how much I should get for this job. But the reason I got this job was because I really wanted to get an experience. So the salary was my second interest, but I kind of think that I should have thought about my salary before what I really wanted to get, because I never thought of it before and I didn't know about it. So what I suggest to other people is to get information how much you get for this kind of job, or any working hours and other insurance things, everything about that. So then you get basically general idea of your salary. And then after that, think about what you really want and think about yourself and your skills. I think the job is you're selling your time, your effort, and your skills. So you really deserve more than what they want to give you. So yeah, that's what I think.
Well, that was Jenny with today's actual story. I think you may relate to her story because I can. Often because I do work as a freelancer, it's very difficult to deciding on how much I should get paid for certain jobs. So certain people or companies may call me and they offer me a job and they ask, so how much would you like to be paid, or how much do we have to pay you? Of course, for me, I would like to get paid more, but for the company, yeah, it's best that they save their company's money. So it's very difficult. That's all about negotiating as well. Anyhow, let's check out what Jenny mentioned today. She said, when I negotiated my salary, she's talking about a time that she asked for a raise. I really didn't know how much I should have gotten paid. Okay, so yeah, I can relate once again. When you negotiate your salary or, of course, your pay, sometimes you may be left with no idea as to how much you should get paid. So that is exactly what she's talking about. When I negotiated my salary, I had no idea how much I should have gotten paid. Here we go with the next one. The reason I got the job was because I really wanted the experience. Okay, so the salary was my second interest. I see. So what she's saying here is the most important thing was to get experience. That was the main reason I got the job. And so salary wasn't so important. It was my second interest. Her first interest was what? The job, so that she would get experience. And her second interest was her salary. The next one, you really deserve more than the amount they will want to give you or pay you. That's true. Exactly as I mentioned in the beginning of today's actual story. The company wants to save money, and you, of course, want to get paid more. So that is exactly what Jenny is saying. You really deserve more than the amount the company would like to pay you because you want more and they want to spend less. Okay, that about does it for today's actual story. Let's have a listen to it one more time.
When I negotiate my salary for this job, I telling the truth, I really didn't know how much I should get for this job. But the reason I got this job was because I really wanted to get an experience. So the salary was my second interest. But I kind of think that I should have thought about my salary before what I really wanted to get, because I never thought of it before and I didn't know about it. So what I suggest to other people is to get information how much you get for this kind of job, or any working hours and other insurance things, everything about that. So then you get basically general idea of your salary. And then after that, think about what you really want and think about yourself and your skills. I think the job is you're selling your time, your effort, and your skills. So you really deserve more than what they want to give you. So yeah, that's what I think.
Well, we have been talking about business negotiations, but no matter what, no matter in which situation, when we negotiate, I think we all need some skills. I'm not very good at negotiating, but maybe we can practice haggling at stores or even the markets, and perhaps we may gain something from that experience, right? Anyhow, that was our lesson for today. I hope you all had fun and learned a lot from the lesson. Please do keep in mind that we will have each and every script up on our homepage, so come by to check it out. Next time, we'll be talking about scheduling appointments. We often, in the business world, have to get together, have meetings, conferences, but you can also get together for a simple appointment, right? A simple meeting. So that will be our topic for our next lesson. In the meantime, come to our homepage, find your way over to www.ebse.co.kr, look for Actual English with me, Jennifer Clyde, and come by to say hello. All right, everyone, that's all for today. I'll catch you again next time. Bye for now.